On August 4, 1972, Uganda's President Idi Amin announced a decision that would reshape the nation's history, the expulsion of its Asian population.
Really, sir?
Yes, they must go to their country.
Even nationals of Uganda?
If they want to go, they are welcome to go.
What will happen to these people if they don't go by the time limit?
I think they will be sitting like they are sitting on the fire. I will tell you this. You just wait after 3 months.
What will you do to them?
Okay, you will see.
You said you wanted Uganda.
I think they will not sit comfortable here in Uganda. I will tell you this. I must actually tell you the truth.
While framed as a bold move to reclaim Uganda's economy for its citizens, the expulsion was rooted in a complex web of colonial legacies, economic disparities, and rising nationalist sentiment.
Uganda is not yet independent, I will say that. Even when the British handed over on the 9th of October 1962, the Uganda still not yet independent. Uganda will be independent after this, my decision, after I want to see that the whole Kampala street is not full of Indians. It must be proper black, and administration in those shops is run by the Ugandans.
The arrival of Asians in Uganda began in the late 19th century under British colonial rule. To build the Uganda Railway that linked Uganda and Kenya with the port of Mombasa on the Indian Ocean, the British brought 30,000 Indian laborers from regions like Punjab, Gujarat and Goa between 1895 and 1903. Many workers endured harsh conditions, disease and death during construction of the railway. While most returned to India, a significant number stayed and transitioned into trade, commerce and small-scale industries. Now, the British colonial government positioned Asians as a buffer class between Europeans and Africans. Asians were encouraged to establish businesses, manage trade, and handle administrative work. They quickly filled economic roles that Africans were excluded from, such as running shops, wholesale businesses, and import-export networks. Over time, Asians became integral to Uganda's urban economy, particularly in urban centers like Kampala, Jinja, and Entebbe. However, their prosperity under colonial policies came at a cost. Africans, marginalized and excluded from similar opportunities, grew resentful of the perceived favoritism toward Asians. Additionally, the colonial ban on Asian ownership of agricultural land further entrenched their economic focus on trade, reinforcing stereotypes of Asians as profiteering outsiders.
The reason why they dominate the economy is because they're actually better businessmen, that they're better at doing those kind of things than the Africans are. Willie?
No, it isn't. The fact is that the Africans were deprived of opportunities to get into trade. That's the whole point behind this.
By this time, Asians controlled 90% of Uganda's businesses and contributed the majority of its tax revenue. While Asians played a vital role in Uganda's economy, they remained socially and culturally distinct. Determined to preserve their heritage, the community established temples, mosques, and churches where they practiced their faiths. Traditional customs, such as arranged marriages and speaking their own languages, remained integral to their identity. They wore distinct clothing and maintained strong community networks that ensured cultural continuity. This cultural distinctiveness, however, contributed to a sense of separation between Asians and Africans. Social interactions between the two races were predominantly centered around business activities, with intermarriage between the two communities remaining uncommon. Asians often resided in distinct urban neighborhoods, which some Africans perceived as a reluctance to fully integrate into Ugandan society. By the time Uganda gained independence in 1962, these differences had become more pronounced. Before Uganda gained independence, many Asians living in the British Protectorate held citizenship of the United Kingdom and colonies due to their descent from individuals born in undivided Imperial India or through registration or naturalization. Others were nationals of India or Pakistan, while some remained British protected persons. Independence brought new pressures for Uganda's Asian community. The 1962 constitution allowed residents to acquire Ugandan citizenship, but many Asians hesitated, fearing political instability. Those who applied for citizenship encountered bureaucratic delays, rejections, and corruption. thousands of them were left stateless with neither British nor Ugandan nationality. This lack of legal status made the Asian community especially vulnerable to future political changes. Tensions between Africans and Asians were further exacerbated when Milton Obote became president in 1966, pursuing the Africanization of Uganda. Key measures included supporting African entrepreneurs, restricting non-citizens from certain businesses, nationalizing industries, limiting Asian immigration, and prioritizing Africans for public sector jobs. Many Africans saw these policies as a step toward reclaiming economic control, while Asians felt marginalized and targeted, exacerbating the divide between the communities. These tensions laid the groundwork for heightened divisions, which escalated under Idi Amin's regime. Milton Obote was overthrown by the army while attending a Commonwealth conference in Singapore. General Idi Amin orchestrated the coup, reportedly aware of Obote's plans to investigate him for alleged misappropriation of army funds. Initially, many Asians, particularly non-citizens engaged in trade, industry, and other professions, welcomed Amin's rise to power in January 1971. This change in leadership alleviated frustrations over delays in citizenship and entry permit applications, as well as concerns about Obote's economic reforms targeting disparities between Africans and non-Africans. Idi Amin's ascent to power was perceived by some in Uganda as the start of a new chapter. The general positioned himself as a unifying leader, pledging to bridge past divisions and create a climate of trust and optimism for the nation. Unfortunately, this initial optimism faded as Amin's regime became increasingly authoritarian. His leadership became characterized by unpredictable decisions, populist rhetoric, and suppression of dissent. To consolidate power, Amin appealed to nationalist sentiments, and the Asian community in Uganda was often singled out as a focal point of his policies. In December 1871, General Amin addressed a meeting of Asian representatives in Kampala, Uganda's capital. He accused some Asians of being disloyal to Uganda, refusing to integrate, and committing various offenses. These offenses included violating exchange control regulations, smuggling goods like sugar, hoarding products to create artificial shortages, charging Africans inflated rents, evading income tax, and lastly, corrupting officials. Amin also announced that all pending citizenship applications would be cancelled. He added that while applicants could reapply, their applications would not be treated favorably unless the Asian community made genuine efforts to integrate. The Asian leaders responded to Amin's accusation with a memorandum defending their position. They argued that as a minority group, they lacked the power to influence major social changes. They emphasized that criminal and corrupt practices were not unique to the Asian community and explained that cultural differences, such as their reluctance to intermarry, were part of their heritage and not meant to disrespect Ugandan society. They also condemned Amin's policies as unjust, highlighting the threat they posed to the livelihoods of thousands. Unfortunately, Idi Amin rejected their arguments and continued to accuse the Asian community of sabotage and disloyalty. For several months, no further action was taken against the Asian community, but this calm did not last for long.
These Asians were brought by British here to Uganda. Therefore, the British and those, they are responsible to look after those Asians.
Idi Amin claimed to have had a divinely inspired dream in which God told him to take action against Uganda's Asians. By mid-1972, Amin's rhetoric became increasingly inflammatory. On August 4, 1972, while traveling south from Karamojong, Amin addressed the Airborne Regiment in Tororo, a town in eastern Uganda near the Kenyan border. During this wide-ranging speech, Amin declared that Uganda had no place for over 80,000 Asians holding British passports who are sabotaging Uganda's economy and encouraging corruption. General Amin told the soldiers that he wanted to see Uganda's economy controlled by Ugandans, particularly black Ugandans. Amin framed the move as a necessary step to transfer economic control to indigenous Ugandans and reduce reliance on non-African communities in key sectors of the economy. Unsurprisingly, Amin's statement quickly drew sharp criticism, especially from the international press. One question that emerged was whether Idi Amin had genuinely miscalculated the number of non-citizen Indians in Uganda, or if he deliberately ignored the distinction between citizen Asians and non-citizen Asians. According to the 1969 census, Uganda's Asian population totaled just over 74,000, of which 25,000 of them were Ugandan citizens. The rest, except for a few thousand nationals of India, Pakistan and Bangladesh, were British passport holders. Despite this, Idi Amin also seemed to imply that Asian citizens of Uganda might be included in the expulsion. However, on August 9, in a major declaration at the command post in Kampala, Idi Amin clarified that his expulsion policy applied only to non-citizen Asians. During his speech, he also announced exemptions for certain Indian professionals whose services, such as doctors and engineers, were deemed essential to Uganda. Speaking to students at Makerere University, Amin reiterated these policies and repeated the accusations he had previously made in his December 8, 1971 memorandum. The general blamed the Indian community for practices such as hoarding goods, smuggling, and corruption. Yet Amin's policy soon became more confusing and inconsistent. Over a week later, at a mass rally in Kigezi district, he announced that the 23,000 citizen Indians would also be required to leave Uganda. At the same time, he declared that the private sale of property was prohibited, except for personal items like clothing, radios, and furniture. Businesses, industries, and buildings owned by Indians could only be sold through the government, and private transfers to relatives, friends, or others were strictly forbidden. All such property had to be registered with the government by August 31. Now, according to Idi Amin, the departure of citizen Asians would occur after the first phase of expelling non-citizen Indians had been completed. He accused the citizen Asians of engaging in sabotage and arson or planning to do so, while also acknowledging that Uganda would experience economic hardship as a result. Amin claimed it would be short-lived and necessary for Uganda's future independence and growth. In the same speech, Amin reversed his earlier stance on exempted professionals. He now ordered that all Indian professionals who had initially been spared under the August 9 declaration were also required to leave Uganda by the November 7 deadline. He justified this decision by accusing the Indian professionals of participating in or intending to participate in sabotage. He also argued that after the departure of other Indians, these professionals would no longer be able to serve Uganda in the proper spirit. On August 22, Amin changed his position again, stating that citizen Indians would not be required to leave during the second phase of the expulsion. However, their citizenship status would undergo careful review. Those found to have dual nationality, a status Uganda did not recognize, would be stripped of their citizenship and asked to leave the country. A few days later, in response to criticism from international leaders, particularly Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, Idi Amin defended his policy. In a cable to Nyerere, Amin claimed that the Indian problem in Uganda was a British problem, not a racial issue. He also argued that his policy aimed to free Uganda's economy from British Indian control, not to target Indians as a racial group. What had started as a vague announcement in Tororo soon became one of the most significant and devastating policies of Amin's regime. In an effort to manage the situation, Britain sought to rally Commonwealth support, hoping that collective pressure could moderate Amin's stance and ease the growing tension. However, Amin openly mocked these efforts, dismissing them as imperialist pressures and firmly stating that he would not yield to external influence. Some people have also suggested that Amin's actions were driven, at least in part, by a desire for revenge against the British government. This theory stems from Britain's earlier refusal to supply Idi Amin with arms for a planned invasion of Tanzania, a decision that may have fueled Amin's hostility and hardened his resolve.
You've said you wanted to teach Britain a lesson, President. Why is that?
And that is now a lesson I'm teaching the British. I am teaching now the lesson because I am correcting them from the mistake they had made. If they had think before earlier that there is African here who can even work under building the railway with the instruction given to them by the British, this problem will not happen.
Isn't this going to end your friendship with Britain?
I don't mind ending. What are you giving me? What is more you are giving me? British actually deceived me last year, giving me £10 million. They never give up to now. When I had a really very critical problem of finance up to now. Now I don't want that man again. And now they have given, I think every year, 4.5 million every year. But this, even if they withdrawn or they take it away, it will not marking time Uganda even 1 minute. I must make this clear. But the British are my best friends.
I wish I understood that.
Amin's announcement to expel Asians from Uganda triggered widespread panic and despair. Families scrambled to secure exit permits, often enduring harassment, extortion, and intimidation from officials. Many were forced to abandon their life savings, businesses, and homes, living with little more than a suitcase. Some of the refugees traveled by train to Mombasa, Kenya, enduring harsh conditions before boarding ships to destinations like Karachi.
On the edge of the tarmac lie the forlorn remnants of the good life. Soaked by storms and bleached in the sun, this Asian baggage has waited here for 2, 3, and sometimes 4 weeks. It'll soon be ruined.
The British government, responsible for those holding British passports, organized evacuation flights to resettle displaced Asians in the UK. The first flight to the UK landed at Stansted Airport on September 18, marking the start of an extensive resettlement effort. Canada also played a significant role, welcoming 6,000 Asians and offering integration programs to help families rebuild their lives. Other nations, including Sweden, Norway, and Belgium, granted asylum to stateless Asians, while the United States resettled approximately 1,500 refugees, prioritizing skilled professionals. The expulsion of Asians from Uganda in 1972 had far-reaching consequences for the country's economy and society. Idi Amin redistributed many of these businesses to his supporters, aiming to empower Ugandans and foster economic self-reliance. However, many of these new owners lacked the experience or expertise needed to manage the enterprises effectively. While the expulsion was intended to assert economic control and benefit Ugandans, it ultimately led to significant economic hardships and a decline in overall productivity. For the expelled Asians, the experience was deeply challenging, but many demonstrated resilience and rebuilt their lives successfully. The transition was not without difficulties, as families had to navigate cultural adjustments, economic hardships, and the trauma of displacement. If you're still watching this video, thank you for making it this far. Once again, allow me to plug my new channel, The Knowledge Quest. The next video on the channel will be a story about El Salvador's highly effective crackdown on its notorious gangs. The link to the channel can be found in the description box below as well as on the pinned comment. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Tatenda for African Biographics. Until next time, cheers. Have a good one.